They called him a visionary, a prophet, the next great mind of humanity. But behind closed doors, John Allen was building something far more disturbing. It was a cult disguised as a science experiment, a $200 million utopia that became a living hell. And the strangest part, Steve Bannon, yes, that Steve Bannon, played a key role in turning it all upside down. This is the shocking, bizarre, and utterly terrifying true story of the research facility turned psychological trap. Let's rewind. Before the fame, the funding, and the 3-acre glass dome in the Arizona desert, there was John Allen. He was an Ivy League graduate, a poet, a dramatist, and a man of many talents, or at least that's what his followers believed. But Allen didn't just want to study the Earth, he wanted to recreate it from scratch and control every part of it. In the early 1970s, he formed a commune called the Synergia Ranch in New Mexico, a kind of intellectual utopia. To outsiders, it looked like a bunch of free-thinking artists and scientists, but inside, it was anything but free. Allen's commune was based on strict rules, a rigid hierarchy, and a deep belief in his vision. He was the leader, the teacher, the philosopher, and king. But in the late 80s, Allen had a new dream, one that would captivate the media and billionaire investors. It was Biosphere 2, a giant glass dome meant to simulate Earth's ecosystem, aka Biosphere 1. It had everything: a rainforest, an ocean, a desert, a savanna, all sealed inside a $200 million structure. The goal? To test whether humans could survive in a closed environment like Mars or the Moon. But that was only part of the story. Behind the scenes, Biosphere 2 was not just a science experiment, it was a cult of personality, run by Allen and his most loyal followers from the commune. Everyone involved had ties to Synergia Ranch, the engineers, the ecologists, and even the so-called mission crew who lived inside for 2 years were all loyal to Allen. No one dared question him. September 26, 1991, the doors sealed. 8 people were officially cut off from the rest of the planet. No way out, no help coming, for 2 full years. At first, it looked like a miracle. They grew crops, filtered their own water, recycled every breath of air, smiling for the cameras. A perfectly sealed world, and it seemed to be working. Then, oxygen started to vanish.
Oxygen started going down right from word-go, but we didn't see it.
At first, no one panicked, but it didn't stop. Levels dropped, breathing got harder. Some crew members became disoriented. Another one passed out walking across the room. They ran tests, blamed the soil, the concrete, the microbes. Nothing added up, and no one outside was allowed to know. So the team made a decision, one that violated the entire mission. They pumped in oxygen from outside, quietly, without telling the public, without documenting it as a failure. That was the moment the science died, but the illusion that had to survive. And while they fought to keep the system alive, something worse was happening. They turned on each other. The crew fractured into 2 factions. One group controlled the food systems, the other controlled infrastructure. They stopped sharing meals, stopped speaking, started slipping secret notes into planters. Trust collapsed, conversation turned cold, suspicion filled the dome like the mold on the glass. Some started hoarding food and accusing others of sabotaging the mission. It was supposed to be humanity's trial run for life on Mars. Instead, it was turning into a psychological slow burn survival test under 6,500 panels of sealed glass. Then came the break, literal and symbolic. Jane Poitner, one of the crew members, sliced her hand open in a farming accident. She didn't wait. She walked to the airlock and stepped out. She returned stitched up, but she brought more than bandages. She brought outside supplies, unapproved, undeclared, just there, inside. The message was clear. The seal was broken, again, and this time there was no hiding it. Was it still an experiment or a $200 million performance piece spiraling into chaos? The public still believed the mission was holding strong. Inside the dome, it was already falling apart. After 2 long years, the first crew finally stepped out of the dome. They were thinner, exhausted, and barely speaking, but technically, they had made it. They had survived, and to the outside world, that was enough. So they tried again, a second crew, a second mission, same dome, same systems, same dream, but the cracks were still there. And this time, they brought in a new figure to take control. Enter Steve Bannon. Back then, he wasn't a political fire starter. He was a corporate consultant, known for gutting leadership, cutting costs, and flipping power structures. His job was to fix Biosphere 2. What he brought was pressure, secrecy, and control. And 4 weeks into the mission, it all snapped. 2 members of the original crew came back, not to consult, not to help, to break in. They've lived inside that dome for 2 years. They knew what it did to the mind, how isolation twists people, how fragile the systems really were. And now, from the outside, they were watching it all happen again, under new leadership, with more instability and fewer safeguards. They tried to raise concerns, tried to warn people, but no one listened. So they did the only thing that would make the world pay attention. They smashed the glass with crowbars at dawn, breaking the very seal they had once sworn to protect. It wasn't sabotage, it was a last resort, a distress signal. They weren't trying to end the mission, they were trying to stop a tragedy before it started. They believed the new team inside was in danger, not from the dome, but now from the people running it. They said the project had been hijacked, twisted, turned into a PR puppet show controlled by the people who didn't understand their systems. They didn't care about the people inside anymore. This wasn't a science experiment, it was corporate theatre, and the stakes were too high to stay silent. Their message was simple: if no one did something, someone was gonna get hurt. Days later, federal marshals showed up, not to investigate, to shut it down. The dome was sealed one last time, but this time, it wasn't science that closed it, it was law enforcement. No farewell, no press conference, no answers. The dream of a second Earth ended with shattered glass and silence. The headlines moved on and the funding dried up, and Biosphere 2, the once hailed humanity's backup plan, became a punchline. Scientists dismissed it as pseudoscience. The media called it a space cult in a fishbowl, and to the public, it was just another weird 90s experiment that got out of hand. The dome still stood, but the dream had collapsed, and yet the people who lived inside, they didn't see it as a failure. They'd nearly starved, lost muscle, lost friendships. Some didn't speak to others for months. They watched their own systems break down, watched trust evaporate, watched the boundary between experiment and survival devolve, and yet they still called it one of the most profound experiences of their lives. Because for all its breakdowns from the secrecy and the dysfunction and shattered glass, Biosphere 2 actually did something that no one else had ever done. It sealed humans inside of a breathing ecosystem and forced them to depend upon it and each other for every bite of food and every drop of water, as well as every breath. And even as it unraveled, it worked, not just in the way anyone expected. They built a sealed world to test the future, and it failed, not because the tech was wrong, but the people inside couldn't hold it together. They went in trying to simulate another planet, but what they really built was a mirror. And maybe the scariest part, we're still inside one, only this time, no one's coming in to pump extra oxygen. Thanks for sticking around to the end. It really means a lot for our team. We're switching some things up on the channel and we're trying some new directions, so let us know what you think. We're always appreciative of you being here, and thanks for the support.